Well, thank you so much. And first of all, I just want to thank Congressman Pittenger for hosting another excellent forum and also for including this important topic of human trafficking. As I was saying to someone earlier today, this really intersects global security at the deepest levels. You will never find a country in the world that threatens the global security of the world that also is not simultaneously involved in modern slavery and actually using modern slavery oftentimes to fund their operations. So just please keep that in mind. Oftentimes human trafficking is really viewed as just a humanitarian issue, not that that's not important, but it absolutely intersects with global security. And that's why I'm so thankful that Congressman Pittenger, really it was his vision that we have a task force on human trafficking within PISF for that very reason. So thank you. I want to introduce, before I get started, the other members of our panel here today. Everyone here today is actually a member of our task force on human trafficking. And just to give you a little brief introduction on what that is, for those of you who don't know, we are a subcommittee of PISF. We started about a year ago, really very organically out of conversations that emerged at the forum in Budapest, Hungary, surrounding human trafficking. We, in just 1 year, have grown to 32 members from 18 different nations and all 6 continents. And most importantly, our members include some of the most influential anti-trafficking lawmakers, government leaders, as well as survivor leaders from around the world. We are the first policy consortium of this kind to focus exclusively on human trafficking at the policy level through parliamentary awareness, collaboration, and engagement. And as I mentioned, all of the panelists here today, they are just a small fraction of those who are here today. Over here on my right, your left, is Honorable Tanya Gould. It says up there that she's the Vice President of the U.S. Advisory Council, which she was, and now she is the Anti-Trafficking Director for the state of Virginia. Congressman Burgess Owens is going to be with us in a few moments, and I'm going to give him a different introduction. And then I have with me over here on my left, MP Arnold Viersen from Canada. He has done amazing work. I could sit here and just list for you all that he has done on behalf of anti-trafficking efforts in the country of Canada and continues to do. And then next to that, MP Sonia Crimi from France, and she brings a very interesting perspective, not only on human trafficking, but on the intersection with mass migration. So really look forward to having all of you hear from these people today. And I don't know who's doing the slides. Oh, it's already up. Perfect. So I wanted to start today by giving you an introduction to human trafficking. I know some of you may understand what it is, some of you may not. When I refer to human trafficking, I am not referring to smuggling, so I just want to say that from the outset. Sometimes with the language, people think trafficking, and I'm referring to smuggling. I'm actually referring to, today what we're going to be talking about is sex trafficking specifically. And I know that can be an uncomfortable topic, but it really is important. According to a new report by the ILO, almost 50 million people are enslaved in some form of human trafficking globally. It's gone up 10 million approximately in the last 5 years. And so what I really want to start with today is just explaining to you that human trafficking can happen to anyone. It is not a crime that affects just a small few. It really can happen to anyone. All of us likely have regrets in life. We have things we wish we could do over, things that we wish we had done differently if we had known information that we have now. And for victims and survivors of violence and human trafficking, they wish that they could turn back time and rewrite history. And that's why today I am actually going to focus on the prevention aspect of fighting human trafficking globally. Prevention ensures that thousands of children, teenagers, and adults do not have to wish that they were trafficked. They can avoid it altogether. And to illustrate this, I'm actually going to share with you a real story from here in the United States. So I've changed this girl's name, but her name is Abigail. And she's a high school girl here in the United States. Her parents were married. They loved her very much. She had a social life, and actually she had a job at the mall. And when she was working at this shopping center, her employer was grooming her. And she did not know at the time that her employer was a trafficker. But this is actually a very common scenario. They pose as an employer, or they pose as a boyfriend, even sometimes. And she received, her employer actually had eventually made an unusual request to her, but she trusted him at this point, and so she was planning to actually go with him the next day. But fortunately for Abigail, during school, she received education about human trafficking, and specifically on the signs of grooming. And she recognized that this sounded similar to the scenario with her employer. So she went home and she told her mother, and her mother then called the police, and the police investigated, and it turns out it was trafficking, and he was a trafficker. And so he was actually arrested, and actually others were as well. And because of that, Abigail was not trafficked. She was not trafficked. That was because of prevention education in her school. Now, her scenario is not common. Usually we hear about this later. But prevention education, this is one example of how it can impact the course of someone's life forever. Prevention education saved Abigail from what could have been a very different story. And it has spared the lives of countless people who might otherwise have been targeted by a trafficker. Abigail's experience shows that no one and no community is immune to human trafficking, not here in the United States or anywhere in the world. Unfortunately, what it also demonstrates is that there is a growing demand for the purchase of human beings for sex. Human trafficking is said to be, as we have it, the second largest criminal enterprise in the world, second only to drug trafficking, actually. And it is estimated to pull in $150 billion annually for traffickers. And that's a rough estimate. It is likely higher than that. Unfortunately, only 1% of victims are ever identified. Now, I only have a few minutes here today, but I want to be clear that any discussion about the prevention of human trafficking should not only focus on the prevention of potential victims, but also on preventing potential buyers of human trafficking. Traffickers prey on girls like Abigail because there is a demand for this, like there is a demand for drugs. If there were suddenly no buyers, then we would have no sex trafficking problem. And this is why all prevention education should focus on not only recognizing the signs of grooming and potential trafficking, but it should also focus on educating youth who will grow up eventually to become potential buyers. Topics like human dignity, and for teens, a very transparent explanation of the harm to victims emotionally and physically when they are coerced into having sex multiple times a day with people against their will. I firmly believe that if more people were taught at a young age that every life has equal value and to have empathy for those who are victims and survivors, then we would have fewer youth grow up to be buyers. So that being said, I want to address the prevention of sex trafficking globally as well through education about the kafala system. Now, some of you may have heard of this because of the World Cup in Qatar, but the U.S. Trafficking in Persons report last year highlighted the kafala system specifically, where people migrate voluntarily to countries in the Middle East to work in agriculture, construction, or domestic servitude under a visa system that gives employers full control over workers' movements and freedom. Let me just be clear, this is modern slavery. And it is not only harmful to individuals, but it funds criminal networks in the Middle East linked to terrorism, which impacts all of us. But the root of human trafficking or modern slavery is a devaluing of life. Labor trafficking, such as the kafala system, frequently shifts into sex trafficking. Once a person is enslaved in domestic servitude or another form of labor exploitation, this individual is vulnerable to other forms of abuse and exploitation. So this is, I don't know if it's up yet, this is a photo of Hazel. Hazel is actually a friend of mine. We developed a friendship a long time ago, and I first met her when she was actually in slavery in the Middle East. This photo is the day that we secured her release back home, and she was both a labor and a sex slave over there. But she is now free. And now that she is back in Ghana, she actually travels to schools voluntarily throughout Ghana, educating mothers and students about the signs of human trafficking. She said she is passionate about prevention education and often says that she would never have been trafficked if she had known about the lies that were presented to her. Like many young women in Africa, she had a family who loved her, she had dreams, she had hopes which she had wanted to achieve, and she was lured unknowingly into the kafala system. She and others in her village were told about a great opportunity to work as housekeepers for wealthy families in Europe. Hazel scraped together funds, significant amount of funds I might add, to fly herself to Europe to take this job. Unfortunately, halfway through her journey, she was informed that she would not be going to Europe. She could either pay for a return ticket to go back to Ghana, or she could continue to the Middle East. And she chose to continue because she had exhausted her savings. She found herself trapped in a perilous journey, and when she arrived in her unexpected destination, her traffickers actually seized her passport, which is what is done within this system, and she was enslaved in domestic servitude, and then eventually as a sex slave. She worked tirelessly, she was starved to the brink of death, she was raped repeatedly, and she was told that she owed a debt that she could never repay. So I actually want to show this to you. This, I have permission to share this. This is a copy of an actual contract for labor trafficking in the Middle East. This is a traditional contract. And I don't know if all of you can read it, parts of it are blurry, but I'm going to read you just a few statements off of it. The first says, this is a contract for 2 years and it is not able to change. Another comment in there says, there is no day off in a week. Girls are not allowed to go outside of the home without taking permission from the family, even if she wants to buy something from the market or she wants to go back to the office, she should take permission. If any girl wants to go back to her country before the contract ends, she should pay $2,500 to the company and buy the ticket herself. And there's a signature, I mean, I cut all of the details out of this, but there was a signature and a fingerprint, and this is how it's done. So the woman who actually lived under this contract, her name, I'm making up a fake name for her, but her name, we called her Angel. And this is actually a photo of her, and she's on your right. And this is a very interesting story because I actually got this photo in July, on July 7th. This is a very happy photo. This is the day that she was set free and that she got to go home. And this really was an incredible effort with some attorneys on the ground there, but we were able to get her release, and not only her release, but someone else. And this photo came to me literally hours before I spoke this summer in Bucharest, Romania, about human trafficking. And so this was a really rejoicing photo. Unfortunately, her release is highly unusual, but how she ended up in slavery is not. For Angel and other men and women, prevention education would have saved her from ever embarking on this journey in the first place. So as I wrap up, my question for you is, if we disrupt traffickers' business model, we have the potential to not only save millions of people from traumatic abuse and exploitation, but we also can disrupt global terrorism and criminal networks of those who use the profits of sex trafficking to fund warfare. So I'm going to leave you with this. There are 3 things that you can do as legislators to prevent sex trafficking. First of all, it's prioritize funding for widespread education to youth about the signs of human trafficking and also the harm of human trafficking and the importance of human dignity. This is actually incredibly inexpensive. Not only does it save lives, but the cost of education is far less than the cost of restorative care. Each survivor of sex trafficking who is recovered needs thousands of dollars of restorative care, but prevention education is oftentimes just a few dollars by comparison. Our current Congress actually has the opportunity to pass the reauthorization of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, and if this bill passes in the next few weeks, it will provide unprecedented funding to all states for prevention education. So I have the privilege of personally working on the section of HR 6552, which you can look up, and I would encourage you to look it up because it outlines an ideal framework for what good prevention education looks like. The second thing that you can do is I would encourage you to, and all of you can do this, you simply scan the QR code. This is to sign our current Taskforce initiative, which states the importance of survivor advisory councils for human trafficking policies at the national level all around the world. Tanya Gould is going to be talking about this a little bit more in a few minutes, but actually in your packet you can read the full statement. It's also available on our website. But this simple action will elevate the voice of victims and survivors within policy and decision-making roles throughout the world. And then the last thing, finally, if you are a current parliamentarian or an ambassador who prioritizes human trafficking issues, I would encourage you to consider joining our task force. Just yesterday, the UN's leading policy forum, I think it's up there, is it the slide before? The UN's leading policy forum on human trafficking called the Interagency Coordination Group, it's ICAT, it's called ICAT, issued a call to action urging countries actually specifically to cooperate and gave response recommendations based on to combat human trafficking due to the increasing crises globally. So just so you're aware, there are currently 27 armed conflicts around the world right now, and the conflict in Ukraine is only one of them. So our world literally is experiencing this all over, and we know that as armed conflict increases, the rates of human trafficking increase as well. So anyway, without further ado, I actually want to introduce Congressman Owens. We're so grateful that you are here to join us today. So Congressman Owens is obviously a congressman from the United States, from the state of Utah. He has made human trafficking one of his priority issues, and he has done remarkable work, honestly, in a relatively short amount of time here on Capitol Hill to combat human trafficking. Some of his most notable legislation, which I'd encourage you to look up, are the No Travel for Traffickers Act, which prevents human traffickers from moving freely between countries. He also co-sponsored several important anti-trafficking bills, including the Earn It Act, the End Child Exploitation Act, the Child Rescue Act, and the Human Trafficking Awareness and Training Act. And one of the most important bills, which he is going to talk about here in a moment, is the Trafficking Survivors Relief Act, which clears the criminal record of survivors of human trafficking who have been wrongly charged with crimes associated with their trafficking. So Congressman Owens, thank you so much for joining us.